Lake Huron did not burn by accident. It burned because of what flowed into it. If you're interested in documented Great Lakes history that most people have forgotten, subscribe before we begin. Because the night Lake Huron caught fire was not a myth. It was the result of decades of industrial discharge, oil runoff, and chemical waste entering the St. Clair River system, the narrow waterway connecting Lake Huron to Lake St. Clair and eventually Lake Erie. To understand how part of Lake Huron could burn, you have to understand the geography. At the southern end of Lake Huron, water flows into the Clair River near Port Huron, Michigan, and Sarnia, Ontario. By the mid-20th century, this area had become one of the most industrialized corridors in North America. Petrochemical plants, refineries, manufacturing facilities, both sides of the river were lined with industry. For decades, waste disposal regulations were minimal or non-existent. Chemical byproducts, oil residues, and industrial runoff were routinely discharged into the river. Over time, sections of the water surface accumulated flammable slicks. By the 1960s, environmental awareness was growing, but enforcement remained limited. Then came the incident that forced attention. In 1969, a petroleum-based discharge ignited on the St. Clair River near the southern outlet of Lake Huron. Flames spread across the surface of the water, fed by accumulated oil and chemical contaminant. Witnesses described fire moving across the river's surface, black smoke rising, the water itself appearing to burn. Technically, it wasn't the water that was on fire. It was the petroleum and chemical waste floating on top. But visually, the distinction didn't matter. A major Great Lakes waterway was in flames. The incident was not as widely publicized as the Cuyahoga River fire in Ohio, which had already become symbolic of environmental neglect. But the St. Clair River fire directly connected to Lake Huron reinforced the same reality. Industrial pollution had reached a level where waterways could ignite. The fire forced investigations into discharge practices along the river corridor. It also contributed to mounting public pressure that eventually led to major environmental legislation. The Clean Water Act of 1972 did not emerge from a single event. It followed a pattern of visible failures. Rivers catching fire, fish dying in massive numbers, drinking water contamination. Lake Huron itself is vast, the second largest of the Great Lakes by surface area. It did not burn in its entirety, but its outflow channel, tied directly to its ecosystem, had become contaminated enough to sustain flame. That fact alone changed public perception. The Great Lakes had long been viewed as too large to pollute, too vast to damage permanently, too powerful to be altered by industry. The fire proved otherwise. What burned on the Clair River was not just oil, it was an illusion. The illusion that industrial growth had no environmental cost. In the decades that followed, water quality monitoring increased. Discharge regulations tightened. Cleanup efforts began on both the U.S. and Canadian sides of the border. The Clair River remains one of the most heavily monitored waterways in the region today, but the fire is rarely discussed. Unlike the Cuyahoga River, which became nationally symbolic, the Lake Huron-St. Clair corridor fire faded into regional memory. It does not appear in most textbooks. It is not widely commemorated, yet it played a role in shaping environmental reform across the Great Lakes. When people say a lake caught fire, it sounds impossible. But what actually burned was what humans had placed upon it: oil, chemical runoff, industrial waste. The Great Lakes are resilient, but they are not immune. The night Lake Huron's waters ignited was not supernatural. It was industrial, it was preventable, and it was a turning point. Today, water quality in the region is significantly improved compared to the mid-20th century. Though challenges remain, the fire serves as a reminder of what happens when oversight lags behind expansion. Environmental disasters are often remembered through images. Flames on water is one of them. If you want more documented Great Lakes history, where environmental reality reshaped policy and perception, subscribe. Some disasters are loud, others are forgotten, but even lakes can burn when pushed far enough.